That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan and Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan and Fields, love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
Nurses, are you tired of spending weeks or even months finding the perfect job that matches your specialty with your ideal shift and salary? LinkedIn has improved your job search experience. Search by specialty, the shift you want to work, and the salary you want to make. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and begin searching today. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
Note, side effects may include less time finding the perfect job, working a shift that you love with a salary that can take you to St. Thomas, Jamaica, and continuous smiling because of how simple this process was.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. You are entering the Stone Zone. This just in, U.S. tariff revenues have risen 60% to $15 billion in April, a new all-time high. Yet inflation remains stable and relatively low, proving that President Trump's basic economic theory is correct. The only one who seems to think that inflation's a danger is Jerome Powell. Today in the Stone Zone, we're going to be taking your questions. You can go to stone@stonezone.com, stone@stonezone.com to email me your questions. I've been thinking a lot about the meaning of life recently. Listen to the words of my mentor, one Richard Milhous Nixon.
The unhappiest people of the world are those in the watering places, the international watering places like the south coast of France and Newport and Palm Springs and Palm Beach, going to parties every night, playing golf every afternoon, then bridge, drinking too much, talking too much, thinking too little, retired, no purpose. And so, while I know there are those who totally would disagree with this and say, gee, boy, if I could just be a millionaire, that would be the most wonderful thing. If I could just not have to work every day, if I could just be out fishing or hunting or playing golf or traveling, that'd be the most wonderful life in the world. They don't know life. Because what makes life mean something is purpose, a goal, the battle, the struggle, even if you don't win it.
I could not agree more. We're taking your questions tonight. You can go to stone@stonezone.com right now and email me your questions. Let's jump right in. Lena in Austin, Texas says, I saw you recently on the Alex Jones show, and you said you thought that Tulsi Gabbard would be the first woman president. What is it you see in Gabbard? Well, I did say that, and I do believe it. I didn't necessarily say that she would be president in 2028, although that is certainly a possibility. But she's only 43 years old. She recently celebrated her birthday. I must tell you that I think she is charismatic, she is dynamic, she is sure-footed, she is extraordinarily principled. I would note that during her confirmation hearings, certain senators wanted her to recant public statements she had made in the past, and she steadfastly refused to do that. I actually think she is potentially the most impressive political horseflesh I've seen. And remember, I'm a veteran of 14 national presidential campaigns, well, since Ronald Reagan. Keep an eye on Tulsi Gabbard. Let's see. Jasper in San Diego, California asks, I saw Steve Bannon say that Trump would be the Republican nominee in 2028. I also saw where you disagreed with that. So can Trump run again in 2028? Well, look, I give Steve Bannon credit as a troller, because that's what I think he's doing. As even Bill Maher of who I'm not a big fan, pointed out, the U.S. Constitution specifically prohibits any person from being elected to more than 2 4-year terms. In fact, it goes a little further, and it says that if any person fills the balance more than 3 years of an unexpired term of a president before them, such as, say, LBJ followed JFK after his assassination, they would be ineligible to run. So Bannon's answer when asked about how he would get around the Constitution was, well, we have a team working on it. I don't think there is a way. Now, I have seen a political theory that the Republican Party could nominate Vice President J.D. Vance for president and Donald Trump for vice president. Then, upon election, J.D. Vance could resign, under which scenario Trump would become president. Then Trump could appoint J.D. Vance vice president, subject to the confirmation of the U.S. Senate. It's pretty far-fetched. Is it technically possible? It's technically possible, but I ask this. Does anyone actually believe that if J.D. Vance gets elected president in his own right, that he would be anxious to step down? So while I love the Trump 2028 hats, they're evidently on the president's store, and I saw a great picture on X of Eric Trump wearing one, and I would love to see yet another Trump term. I think it is unlikely. Here's another question from Ronan in Seattle, Washington. Ronan writes, I was surprised to see that you advocated a pardon for Marcus Garvey, who was an early civil rights leader. Seems very unlikely. No, actually, I was in the Strand bookstore in the Village in New York City. I was in the basement where some of the older books are, and in one dusty corner, I found a biography of Marcus Garvey. Now, Marcus Garvey was a pioneering Jamaican political leader, publisher, orator, who championed black pride and economic independence, as well as capitalism, in the earliest 20th century. He was the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. Marcus Garvey inspired millions through his advocacy for Pan-Africanism, and he preached self-reliance, free enterprise, self-improvement, and unity for black people. I believe that he was such a threat to the white power structure of the 20s that the FBI, under their first director, J. Edgar Hoover, who held that position all the way into the 70s, framed Marcus Garvey for tax evasion. I think he was a great man. I began advocating for a pardon for him in 2017, right after President Donald Trump took office. I wrote him a letter outlining the reasons why I thought Garvey deserved a posthumous pardon. In the end, I was happy to see that Marcus Garvey was given a posthumous pardon, even if it was by Joe Biden. Thank you so much for your question. Here is yet another. Let's see. Mira from Miami, Florida, asks, now that you've seen the documents released by the Trump administration surrounding the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy Sr., are you satisfied with the conclusion that he was killed by the Palestinian Sirhan Sirhan? No, I actually think that the documents that we have seen are woefully incomplete, and I see the same kind of problems that I saw in the conclusions regarding the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Sirhan Sirhan was always in front of Senator Kennedy. He shot 8 shots, all of them accounted for. He was shooting wildly. None of those shots hit Senator Kennedy. Now, Thomas Noguchi, who was the Los Angeles County coroner, one of the most famous coroners in the country, says in his autopsy report that Senator Robert Kennedy died of a gunshot wound to the rear of his skull at point-blank range, meaning he was shot by someone behind him. I believe that murderer is Thane Eugene Cesar. He was a Filipino who was hired as a security guard by the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles the week before RFK was killed, and who almost immediately after the murder quit his job and moved back to the Philippines. So once again, I don't believe the narrative that we have been presented. By the way, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. agrees with everything I just said. There was a great interview between Mike Tyson and RFK Jr., in which he reached that same conclusion. I would urge you to go see it on YouTube, except for YouTube took it down. Here is a question from Nia in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let's see. Nia says, I think that President Donald Trump's visage should be on Mount Rushmore. Is this actually possible? Well, it would take an act of Congress and a signature by the President of the United States. Now, if both houses of Congress passed a law requiring that Trump's face be chiseled into the side of Mount Rushmore, I'm quite confident that President Trump would sign it. I spoke to a man this morning in South Dakota, Daniel Smith, who told me he is launching a One More for Rushmore campaign. He's going to be posting an online petition to collect the signatures of those who agree that Donald Trump should be on Mount Rushmore. And I'd also point out that Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna has sponsored legislation that would make it legal and direct the Interior Department to put Donald Trump on Mount Rushmore. When they get that petition up, I will be the first to sign it. Here's a question from Zara in Salt Lake City. Zara says, you knew Richard Nixon. Tell us something about Nixon we don't know. Well, let's see. Richard Nixon could play the violin, the piano, the saxophone, the accordion, and the clarinet. He was proficient in all of them, yet he could not read music. He was completely self-taught. Let's see, we have Theo in Columbus, Ohio. By the way, you can send your questions to me at stonezone.com. We're going to be answering your questions for the balance of the show tonight. Here's the question from Theo in Columbus, Ohio, says, what piece of advice were you given that you have taken to heart and you follow every day? Well, let's see. Joe Bruno was the president of the New York State Senate. He was a very great man. He was indicted on completely fraudulent and I think politically motivated charges. But his conviction was vacated by the Supreme Court that said that the law he was charged and convicted under was unconstitutional. Then the Justice Department took the unusual step of re-indicting him, and when he went to trial the second time, well, he was acquitted. He told me, as a young man, that no matter how you felt on any given day, it was vitally important that you do 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups or crunches, and 100 squats, no matter what, and that would work all body parts. And to this day, I followed that regimen. Now, you don't have to do 100 contiguous push-ups. You could do them in 4 sets of 25 or 5 sets of 20. But that will keep you relatively fit if you watch your diet and drink sparingly on top of it. I think you will remain healthy. That advice from former Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno of the Albany area in upstate New York, a very great man who, like me, was the target of a weaponized judiciary, but who survived it, who rose above it, and went on to serve his community. I believe the Joe Bruno Stadium is still in upstate New York. An excellent piece of advice from a true statesman. If you're just tuning in, this is the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and you can send me your questions at stone@stonezone.com. We'll try to get to as many questions today as we possibly can. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial. We'll be back with more of your questions right here in the Zone.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Parents of twins, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Tonight we're taking your questions. You can email them to me at stone@stonezone.com. That's stone@stonezone.com. We're going to try to jam in as many of your questions as we possibly can. Here is a question from Jake in Boca Raton, Florida. Jake says, you're always talking on the air about San Marzano tomatoes. What is so special about them, and are you getting a cut? That's pretty funny. San Marzano tomato, that's not a brand of tomato. That is a style of tomato that is grown in a very specific region, actually a valley, in Italy. They are the finest plum tomatoes that one can procure. And it doesn't matter whether you're making a basic marinara sauce or whether you're making a bolognese or whether you're making sauce to put on top of a pizza. San Marzano tomatoes are absolutely crucial. Now, you have to be very, very careful when you look at the label because they're sold by a number of different companies, several reputable importers. If it says on the label San Marzano style tomatoes, well, that's a fugazi. That's a fraud. You want the real thing. Only San Marzano tomatoes will do. So for all your cooking, I recommend them. I swear by them. On my Sunday show, I usually go through some of my mother's, therefore my grandmother's, favorite recipes. And when I go Italian, those recipes always feature San Marzano tomatoes. Here is a final question. Oren from New Orleans says, who do you support to be the next pope? Well, I would prefer either Cardinal Sarah, who's from Africa, or Cardinal Erdo, who is from Hungary. They would both be considered conservatives, traditionalists. I think that the immediate past pope really lost me when he agreed to let the Chinese Communist Party have a veto power over who could be a bishop in China. I handicapped the race for Pope in yesterday's show. Probably going to be doing it again this weekend. Get your questions ready. You can send them to me now at stone@stonezone.com. We'll pick you up on the other side and answer more of your questions. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
Clorox Scentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Scentiva. Available in Clorox Scentiva Lavender Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone, and I'm taking your questions. You can send them to me at stone@stonezone.com. I'll take questions about politics, news, history, style, culture, food. It's up to you, but I am taking your questions. Here's a question from Mary in Charleston, South Carolina. I saw online that you disputed the idea that if Robert F. Kennedy Sr. had lived, had not been assassinated, that he would have defeated Richard Nixon. That is absolutely right. The year was 1968. There's 2 parts to this answer. First of all, I do not acknowledge, as many of those in Camelot insist, that RFK would have been nominated. Even though he had won the California primary on the very day that he was assassinated, most of the delegates to the 1968 Democrat Convention in Chicago were not selected in primaries or caucuses, and that convention was in the firm control of incumbent Lyndon Baines Johnson. I actually believe that Kennedy, speaking to a student audience in California days before the California primary, when he was asked if he would reopen the investigation into his brother's murder, and he said yes, probably sealed his own fate. Nonetheless, if he had survived, I do not believe he would have been nominated. I believe that Mayor Richard J. Daley of Chicago, who had the largest block of delegates outside of New York and California at that time, would have stuck with LBJ and therefore supported his ultimate choice, Vice President Hubert Humphrey, who you may recall entered no primaries. So the primaries, which were really a contest between Senator Eugene McCarthy of Minnesota, who entered the race because Bobby Kennedy refused to challenge Johnson. Even though he opposed the war in Vietnam, he would not take the plunge, and McCarthy got tired of waiting, so he forged ahead as an anti-Vietnam War candidate. He did not win the New Hampshire primary, but he overperformed there nicking LBJ, causing LBJ to drop out of the convention, after which Robert Kennedy jumped in, which led to many claims that Kennedy was an opportunist. It is unclear that he would definitely have been nominated. Now let's go to the general election. In 1960, John F. Kennedy beat Vice President Richard Nixon by a whisker. But in that election, Kennedy carried every single southern state, all of the deep South states, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. By 1968, Robert Kennedy, the senator from New York, could not have carried any of those states. And therefore, I can tell you firstly, Nixon longed for a rematch with the Kennedys, and I believe he would have beaten Robert Kennedy had he been the nominee. Now, that is a particularly difficult feat. Most people will not remember this, but George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, was running as a third-party candidate and had managed to get on the ballot in virtually every state. So Nixon had to run between Wallace to his right and Humphrey in the end to his left. And, of course, he won that race with a plurality of the vote. He almost lost the race. He made what is normally an enormous mistake in politics and sports. He tried to sit on the lead. Look, the only thing worse in politics than being wrong is being boring. But by taking no risks, he also made no news. The kind of late breaking news was a late surge by Humphrey. A lot of the anti-war Democrats, anti-Vietnam War Democrats, who had initially, after the Democrat convention, refused to endorse Humphrey, came around because they so disliked the specter of Richard Nixon being president. Humphrey had a late surge, and he actually almost won that race. It is interesting that when Nixon and the vanquished Humphrey met privately after the election, that Humphrey broke down in tears, actually crying into Nixon's shoulder. And Nixon, obviously, who had lost a very tough race to John F. Kennedy, told Hubert Humphrey he knew exactly how he felt. Here is a question from Catherine in Minneapolis. She has sent this to stone@stonezone.com. Can you tell us the name of a Democrat you admire? I guess this is a trick question. Yes, I am an admirer of the late Adam Clayton Powell Jr. He was the pastor of the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem, New York. He was also an early civil rights leader, and he was a member of Congress from New York. He rose to become the chairman of the Public Works Committee, which was a very powerful position. He was very handsome. He was very well dressed. He infuriated the segregationists in the Congress, who thought that he was uppity. He drove this beautiful powder blue Jaguar Mark V convertible, which is a gorgeous car. He would drive it right up and park it outside the Capitol to further aggravate the segregationists. He was an articulate advocate for civil rights and for his constituents. He was a very great man. Now, he ultimately was betrayed by one of his proteges, Charles Rangel, who once Adam Clayton Powell was charged, I believe, in a financial scandal in which he was taking kickbacks from a woman on the congressional payroll, I believe. I think that's what it was about. Powell remained very popular, but he split for Bimini. All the tabloid reporters went with him. Adam Powell always had a beautiful woman on his arm, but Rangel ultimately defeated Adam Clayton Powell, ending his congressional career. I was a great admirer of the early civil rights leader, Adam Clayton Powell. So there is a Democrat that I did admire. Here's yet another question. Once again, you can send your questions to me at stonezone.com. Here is a question from George in Nashville. He says, Donald Trump talked about running in 1988, 2000, 2012, and he finally ran in 2016. At what point did you realize that he was really going to run? Well, in all honesty, the idea of a Trump candidacy in 1988 was mine. I think the president has said that in a number of interviews. He was not really all that interested. He still had many real estate mountains to climb. He was a good friend of the Texas billionaire Ross Perot, who had run as a third-party candidate, the Reform Party candidate, in 1992 and 1996. And by 2000, Ross Perot and Jesse Ventura, the former professional wrestler who had been elected governor of Minnesota on the Reform Party ticket, both urged Trump to run. When Donald Trump found out that under the campaign finance laws of 2000, the nominee of the Reform Party, after their national convention, would get a check for $38 million from the public treasury. In other words, Donald Trump could run for president on OPM, other people's money. He did take a serious look at it. He made exploratory trips to New Hampshire, to Los Angeles, to Miami. He went to the Holocaust Museum in L.A. He went to the Bay of Pigs Veterans Museum in Miami, and he made a trip to New Hampshire. In the end, Donald Trump correctly determined that one could not be elected as a third party or independent candidate, that one had to run as either a Republican or a Democrat. Interestingly, in order to consider the Reform Party nomination in 2000, Donald Trump had to change his registration in New York State from the Republican Party, where he had always been registered, to the Independence Party, not Independence, but Independence Party, which was the affiliate of the Reform Party. He ultimately decided not to run. What's interesting is in the Reform Party primaries that took place almost a month after he announced that he would not be a candidate, Donald Trump won the Reform Party primaries in both California and Michigan, which showed me very early his potential appeal as a candidate. It was clear to me that in 2012 that he was serious, but I think he decided that he was interested too late. And the truth is that Mitt Romney had, unfortunately, locked up the Republican nomination. Trump endorsed him and then almost immediately had buyer's remorse. After every debate, he would call me virtually yelling, "What's wrong with this guy? He has no instinct for the jugular. He's smelling more and more like a loser." When did I know that Trump would actually run? I can tell you exactly when it was. It was January 1st of 2013. It was New Year's Day, and as was my custom, I called him at his palatial retreat at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, and we were just talking, and he said, "You know, I should have run. I really think I could have beaten Obama. I'm definitely going to run next time," meaning 2016. And I said, I hope you will, but I've heard this before. And he said, "No, actually, I have already applied to the Patent and Trademark Office to trademark the phrase, 'Make America Great Again.'" And there you have it. Now, it is true that at that White House Correspondents' Dinner, where he was ridiculed by Barack Obama, I could see he was smiling, but I saw the clench of his jaw. I think all that did was to confirm his resolve to score the greatest political upset in American history and become the first president of the United States who was not a governor, not a senator, not a congressman, not a general, but a business person. So there you have it, the Stone Cold Truth, right here in the Stone Zone. We'll be right back to take a few more of your questions. Again, you can email your questions to me at stonezone.com. Whatever you do, don't go away, because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You guys, I just found the most incredible Mother's Day gift. It's called Goldbelly. Goldbelly is this amazing site where you can get the most iconic foods from restaurants all across the U.S., shipped anywhere in the country for free in time for Mother's Day. We're talking cakes from Ina Garten and Martha Stewart, Magnolia Bakery's famous banana pudding, and New York bagel brunches. Make Mother's Day perfect with Goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code MOM. That's Goldbelly.com, promo code MOM.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom: The Dark Ages. Available May 15th on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC. Pre-order now.
Rated M for mature.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Back in the Stone Zone, we got a little time to take a few more of your questions. You can send your questions to me at stone@stonezone.com, stone@stonezone.com. Here is a question from John in Boston. John says, do you really expect us to believe that Lyndon Baines Johnson orchestrated the murder of John F. Kennedy? Not only do I expect you to believe it, I absolutely believe it is true. I wrote a book on this back in 2013, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Now, I do not say that Lyndon Johnson did this by himself. I believe that he orchestrated a plot that involved the Central Intelligence Agency. Their motive was what they thought was John F. Kennedy's bungling of the Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the Pentagon and the intelligence services knew in real time that John and Robert Kennedy, rather than facing down Nikita Khrushchev, as the movie 13 Days would have us believe, made a secret deal with the Russian dictator to remove our NATO missiles from Italy and Turkey, changing the balance of power in the European theater. Of course, that was classified information for 40 years. Our ambassador to Cuba, Earl E.T. Smith, knew that the missiles had never actually been removed from that island gulag. So that explains the motive of the Central Intelligence Agency. And then, of course, I also believe there was involvement by organized crime. Prior to the 1960 election, Ambassador Joseph Kennedy, who was John Kennedy's father, known to many of our audience also as a bootlegger and a robber baron of Wall Street, the partner of Frank Costello, controlling illegal alcohol from New York all the way up to the Canadian border through New England, met with all the heads of the mob families in Chicago, and in return for a pledge of $1 million, which in late 1959 is an enormous amount of money, and a pledge to twist and maybe even break arms for JFK, first in the West Virginia primary, but later in both Illinois, specifically in Chicago, and in Texas. A deal was struck that a Kennedy Justice Department would drop the deportation proceedings against two of the most prominent mobsters of the day, Carlos Marcello, who controlled the mob in Texas and Louisiana, and Santo Trafficante, a particularly vicious gangster who controlled the mob in Florida. Well, after the election, Robert Kennedy Sr. became Attorney General, and his father, Ambassador Joseph Kennedy, was felled by a debilitating stroke, losing the capacity of speech and therefore unable to enforce the deal he had made with the mafia. This, I think, explains the involvement of the mob in the murder of JFK. Now, the other huge player here is Big Texas Oil. They were upset because John Kennedy wanted to repeal the oil depletion allowance, which would have cost them hundreds of millions of dollars in new taxes. And the banking interests were unhappy with John Kennedy because he was insisting on a silver-backed dollar. But it was Lyndon Johnson who had the most immediate need. He was under investigation in the Bobby Baker investigation and the Billy Sol Estes investigation, two of the biggest corruption scandals of the 1960s. In fact, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy's brother, had already begun telling people that LBJ would be dropped from the 1964 ticket and he would be sent to prison. This is why it was Johnson who insisted that Kennedy go to Dallas. It is Johnson who insisted that the motorcade route, which was going from the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, which is outside the city of Dallas, to the Merchandise Mart, which is also outside the city of Dallas, dipped into the city proper, driving through Dealey Plaza, where the motorcade violates the Secret Service protocols and is allowed to come to a full stop at a stop sign. There, I believe that at least one of the shooters was a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace, who worked for, yes, Lyndon Johnson. We think this because Wallace left his fingerprints on the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building, both on the window encasement and on the cardboard boxes that formed the so-called crow's nest. By the way, neither the FBI nor the Dallas police ever found a complete fingerprint for Lee Harvey Oswald. They found what they described as a potential partial print, but they found 38-point fingerprints for Mac Wallace. 6 different people said that they saw a man who met the physical description of Mac Wallace in the window, of medium build, balding. Every single one of them said wearing spectacles. 6 witnesses, 3 of them were prisoners at the jail directly across Dealey Plaza. The other 3 saw Malcolm Wallace from the street. A man named James Carr told the Dallas police that he saw a man who met the physical description of Malcolm Mac Wallace running out of the Texas School Book Depository building minutes after the shooting of John Kennedy, jump in a Nash Rambler and be driven away by a dark-complected man who was either a Native American or perhaps Hispanic. Now, what's interesting is there were no less than 6 attempts on James Carr's life in the years, months and years after he made this report to the Dallas police. What's also interesting is James Carr never heard from the Warren Commission after making that report. You're tuned in to the Stone Zone. We're taking your questions at stonezone.com, and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?